My name is Eleanor Grace, and I am 78 years old. I have lived through wars, buried those I loved, and seen enough of life to know that not every shadow hides from the light. Some shadows cling, some linger, and some are bound to objects that should never be touched. The cursed necklace in my family is one such shadow. I will never forget the night I saw it claim someone for the last time. It was my niece, Charlotte, a bright and daring girl of only 20. She stood before the tall mirror in my sitting room, the chain clasped around her neck, its dark jewel glowing faintly as if alive. She smiled at her reflection, proud, radiant, but her smile faded quickly. Her face paled. Her hand rose to her throat as though the necklace had tightened on its own. "Eleanor," she whispered, her voice trembling. I can't breathe." I rushed forward, clawing at the clasp, but the metal burned my fingers, searing my skin as though it had been forged in fire. The jewel pulsed like a beating heart, faster and faster, until the whole room seemed to throb with its rhythm. Charlotte's eyes widened, terror frozen in them, and before I could scream her name, she was gone. Not fallen, not collapsed. The necklace clattered to the floor as though it had never been worn, empty and waiting for its next victim. I staggered back, my heart pounding, staring at the cursed chain. How many times had I warned her never to touch it? How many times had I begged the family to lock it away, to bury it where no one would ever find it? But curiosity is stronger than fear for some. Charlotte was gone, vanished into nothingness, and all I could do was fall to my knees and weep. But I know the story doesn't begin there. No, the curse of the necklace goes far deeper than Charlotte's disappearance. It began long before she was born, long before I was born. And if I am to tell you everything, I must go back to the beginning, when the necklace first entered our family. It was many years ago, in the time of my grandmother, Margaret, a woman both admired and feared in the village. She was beautiful, proud, and wealthy, but she was also touched by something darker. That necklace first appeared around her neck, a gift, she claimed, from a traveler no one had ever seen before or since. From the moment she wore it, strange things began to happen. Cattle died in the fields. Crops failed. People whispered that she had made a bargain, though no one dared say it to her face. But the necklace did not claim her. Not at first. Instead, it whispered. People said they heard her talking late at night, alone in her room, as though speaking to someone unseen. The servants reported strange lights beneath her door, shadows moving when there was no fire. And then, one by one, those who grew too close to her vanished. A maid, a suitor, even her own sister. All gone without a trace. The only constant in every tale was that Margaret was wearing the necklace when it happened. Of course, these were whispers passed down through generations, hushed at the dinner table, ignored during family gatherings. But I listened. I always listened. Because I saw the necklace myself when I was just a child, locked in a small velvet box that my mother kept hidden at the back of her wardrobe. I can still remember how it looked. Silver so dark it was nearly black, and the jewel at its center, a deep, blood-red stone that seemed to drink in the light rather than reflect it. I should have run from it, but I couldn't. Drew me in. Even then I could feel its pull. That night I asked my mother why she kept it. She looked at me with such fear in her eyes that I never forgot it. "Because it cannot be destroyed," she whispered. "It belongs to us now. And it will always return, no matter where we put it." Her hands shook as she tucked it away again, and I swore I saw relief in her face when the lid closed, as though the necklace itself were watching us. Years passed, and I thought perhaps the stories were just that. Stories meant to keep children obedient. But the older I grew, the more I understood. Every generation in our family has lost someone to the necklace. Cousin, an uncle, daughter. All vanished as though swallowed by the earth. And always after touching it, after daring to wear it, even for a moment. And yet, for reasons I could never comprehend, the necklace was always kept. Locked away, passed down like an heirloom too valuable to discard, too cursed to destroy. We were its keepers, and I grew to believe we were also its prisoners. When Charlotte came to live with me, I warned her, as I had been warned. I showed her the box, told her never to touch it, never to even look at it too long. She laughed the way young people do and said I was just clinging to old ghost stories. But I could see curiosity in her eyes. I knew the necklace had already begun to whisper to her, as it had whispered to me. I should have hidden it better. I should have buried it where no hand could reach. But I was foolish. And on that night, when I found her in front of the mirror with the cursed thing around her neck, I knew it was already too late. But Charlotte's disappearance was only the beginning of what came next. Because when the necklace fell back into my possession, the whispers returned, louder than ever. And this time they called my name. If you want to know how deep the curse of the necklace goes, and what I did after Charlotte vanished, stay with me. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the rest of this chilling tale. The night Charlotte vanished, I barely slept. Every creak of the house, every groan of the old timbers, felt like the sound of something moving in the dark. I sat in my chair, staring at the velvet box on the table in front of me, the cursed necklace resting inside. The chain looked harmless now, still, quiet, as though it hadn't just stolen someone I loved. But I knew better. I knew it was waiting. I wrapped my hands in thick gloves, the kind I used for tending the roses in my garden, and shut the box. Even through the gloves, I swore I felt a faint warmth, as though the metal were alive. I locked it away in the old cabinet in the cellar, the same cabinet where I kept jars of preserved fruit and dusty bottles of wine. I told myself I would never let it out again. But as I turned to leave, I heard something. A whisper. Faint like a sigh through the cracks of the walls. Name. Eleanor. I froze where I stood, my hand trembling on the cellar door. I wanted to believe it was my mind, that grief and fear were playing tricks on me. But the voice was unmistakable. And worse, it was Charlotte's voice. "Help me," she cried. I stumbled backward, my chest tight. It was impossible. She was gone, taken, swallowed whole by the necklace. But what if she wasn't gone completely? What if she was trapped? I pressed my ear against the cellar door. For a moment there was only silence. And then, like a breath carried on the wind, the whisper came again. "Don't leave me here." I fled up the stairs, slamming the door shut behind me, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The house seemed darker than ever, as though the shadows themselves had thickened. I lit every lamp I could find, every candle, trying to chase the darkness away. But the whispers followed me, faint at first, then stronger. Sometimes it was Charlotte. Sometimes it was other voices. Ones I didn't recognize. Women. Children. All pleading. All calling from beyond. I told myself I was losing my mind. But deep down I knew the truth. Those who had vanished. The necklace had not simply destroyed them. It had taken them somewhere. Somewhere they could not escape. By dawn I was exhausted. My eyes ached from crying. My throat was raw from whispering prayers I could barely remember. I brewed myself a cup of tea, my hands shaking so much I spilled half of it on the table. I wanted to call someone. My sister, my neighbor, even the priest, but what could I say? That an old family heirloom had swallowed my niece. They'd lock me away, and the necklace would remain free to hunt for its next victim. So I kept silent. I carried the burden alone. But as the days passed, the whispers grew louder. At night, I could hear footsteps in the hall. Doors creaked open by themselves. Sometimes I caught the faint scent of Charlotte's perfume, drifting through the air, though she was nowhere to be found. And always, the box in the cellar pulsed with a presence that felt alive, like a beating heart beneath the floorboards. One evening I decided to test it. I went down to the cellar, unlocked the cabinet, and opened the velvet box. The necklace lay still, but the jewel at its center glowed faintly red, as though lit from within. I leaned close, and for just a moment I saw it, Charlotte's reflection in the gem. Her face pale, her eyes wide, her mouth open in a silent scream. Then the glow faded, and she was gone. I slammed the box shut, sobbing, clutching it to my chest. It wasn't just cursed. It was a prison. Prison for souls. But why us? Why our family? I thought back to the stories of my grandmother Margaret, the traveler who had given her the necklace, the whispers of bargains and pacts. Could it be true? Had she traded something, her soul or worse, the souls of her descendants, for beauty, wealth or power? And if so, had the necklace been the price? The thought haunted me. If my grandmother had brought this curse into our family, was it now my responsibility to end it? Could it even be ended? My mother had told me it could not be destroyed, that it would always return. But I had to try. For Charlotte. For everyone else it had claimed. I decided then and there I would seek answers. The next morning I visited the village library, an old stone building with shelves that smelled of dust and time. I pored over books of folklore, witchcraft, and curses. Page after page, hour after hour. Most of it was nonsense. Charms against fairies, recipes for love potions, rituals to bring good harvests. But then I found something. A passage in a book so old the pages threatened to crumble in my hands. It spoke of objects called soul vessels. Artifacts created by binding a spirit into stone or metal. The vessels could not be destroyed, for the bound soul gave them life. They would pass from owner to owner, feeding, growing stronger with every soul they consumed. My blood ran cold as I read. The description was exact. A dark jewel. A chain of silver-black metal. A history of disappearances. And worst of all, it said this. To wear such a vessel is to open the door. The first soul it takes is never the last. I slammed the book shut, trembling. My grandmother had not been cursed by accident. The necklace was made, crafted, and it was never meant to be worn. I staggered out of the library, the words echoing in my mind. A vessel of souls. Feeding. Growing stronger. That meant Charlotte wasn't gone. Not entirely. She was inside. And if she was inside, then maybe, just maybe, I could bring her back. But to do that, I would have to face the necklace again. And this time, I feared it would not be content to whisper. That night, as I sat in my chair, staring at the cellar door, I heard it. Clear as day. Charlotte's voice, no longer faint, no longer pleading. It was sharp now. Commanding. Wear it. The command echoed through the house like a bell struck in the dead of night. Wear it. I froze where I sat, my teacup slipping from my hand and shattering against the wooden floor. The voice was not faint this time. It was not a whisper hidden in the shadows. It was clear, sharp, and powerful, as if Charlotte herself stood right behind me. My breath came shallow, my chest tight. I didn't dare turn my head. The house was empty. I knew it was empty. But I could feel it, that presence, thick and heavy, pressing against me from the darkness. I whispered a prayer, though my voice shook. Leave me be. The silence that followed was worse than the command. It was the kind of silence that makes your ears ache, as though the air itself is holding its breath. And then, faintly, the sound of chains rattling from the cellar below. I could not resist the pull. Candle in hand, I crept down the narrow stairs, each step creaking under my weight. The air grew colder the deeper I went, and by the time I reached the cellar door, my candle flickered as though struggling to stay lit. I unlocked the cabinet, my hands trembling so badly that the key nearly slipped from my fingers. And when I opened the velvet box, the necklace lay waiting, glowing faintly red in the dim light. Wear it, the voice repeated. This time it wasn't just Charlotte's voice. It was layered. Many voices, one atop another, all saying the same words. Chorus of the damned. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to slam the box shut, to bury it, to burn the house down if I had to. But something stronger rooted me to the spot. The jewel pulsed like a heartbeat, in time with my own. My hands shook, yet they rose toward it as though not my own. The necklace wanted me. It was calling me. At the last moment I jerked back, dropping the lid closed with a snap. My knees buckled, and I collapsed against the wall, panting, my candle sputtering out. The cellar plunged into darkness, but I could still see the red glow through the cracks of the box. Throbbed like a living thing. I crawled back up the stairs in the dark, scraping my hands raw against the wood, refusing to look back. When I slammed the door shut behind me, I locked it and pushed a chair in front of it for good measure. Only then did I allow myself to breathe again. But I knew this was not the end. The necklace was growing stronger. It wanted me to wear it, and I feared what would happen if I did. Would it take me too? Or would it show me what had become of Charlotte, of all the others? For days I fought it. I busied myself with chores, swept the floors, tended the garden, anything to keep from thinking about the box in the cellar. But the voices did not stop. They followed me into every room, every moment of silence. Sometimes they wept, sometimes they begged, and sometimes they laughed, a hollow, chilling sound that made my skin crawl. I stopped sleeping. The dark was no longer my friend. Each night I sat awake in my chair, clutching a Bible that suddenly felt far too small to protect me. My reflection in the window grew hollow-eyed, older than my years, as though the necklace was feeding on me even from a distance. Then one night I had a dream. Or perhaps it was more than a dream. I stood in a vast empty place, a gray wasteland stretching as far as the eye could see. The air was heavy, thick with despair. And all around me were figures, familiar faces but pale, twisted, their mouths open in silent screams. Charlotte was among them. She reached for me, her eyes wide with terror. "Help me!" she cried, though no sound came. I tried to run to her, but chains shot up from the ground, binding my arms, dragging me back. And at the center of it all, towering above us, was the necklace. Not small and delicate, but enormous, monstrous, its jewel glowing like a blood-red sun. It pulsed, and with each pulse, another figure was dragged into its stone, vanishing forever. I awoke drenched in sweat, my chest heaving, the echoes of that world still burning in my mind. That was where Charlotte was. That was where all of them were. The necklace had not only trapped them, it had built a world from their suffering. And I realized something then. If I ever wanted to save her, I would have to wear it. I would have to go where they had gone. The thought chilled me to my bones. To put it on was to risk everything. My soul, my sanity, my very existence. But the voices grew louder each night, urging me, pushing me closer. I could not endure much longer. So I began to prepare. I wrote letters, sealing them in envelopes to be found if I never returned. I told the truth of the necklace, the history of our family, the curse that had taken too many already. If I failed, I wanted someone, anyone, to know the truth. Perhaps they could do what I could not. But deep inside, a seed of hope burned. If I could put on the necklace, perhaps I could enter that prison world. Perhaps I could find Charlotte. Perhaps I could find all of them. And so, one night with trembling hands, I unlocked the cellar door once more. The whispers were waiting, louder than ever, filling the air like a storm. "Wear it, wear it, wear it," they chanted, the voices overlapping, rising into a roar. I opened the velvet box. The jewel pulsed, brighter than ever, casting bloody light across the walls. My hands shook as I lifted the chain, the metal warm against my skin. For a moment I hesitated. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear nothing else. Then I raised it to my neck. And the moment the clasp clicked shut, the world around me shattered. The world around me dissolved the instant the clasp closed. My home, my cellar, the flickering candlelight, all of it cracked apart like glass, shattering into pieces that fell away into nothingness. In their place came a suffocating darkness, thick and endless, pressing against me from all sides. I couldn't breathe. It felt as though the air itself had been stolen from my lungs. My knees buckled and I fell into blackness. But just as despair threatened to consume me, the ground appeared beneath me, gray, cracked, and lifeless. I was standing in the wasteland from my dream. Only this time it wasn't a dream. The cold wind bit into my skin, carrying with it the cries of countless voices. Shadows stretched across the horizon, writhing as if alive. The cursed world had claimed me. Then I saw them. Figures scattered across the barren land. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow, their movements slow, as though dragged down by invisible chains. They wandered aimlessly, whispering words I couldn't understand. And in the distance, towering above everything, was the necklace. It wasn't small and delicate here. It was a colossus suspended in the sky, its blood-red jewel glowing like a dying sun. Each pulse sent waves of despair rippling through the ground. And with every beat, another figure was pulled screaming into its stone, their essence swallowed forever. A wave of nausea swept over me, but I forced myself to move forward. I had come here for one reason, to find Charlotte. Charlotte! I screamed into the void, my voice breaking. The wind swallowed my cry, but faintly I thought I heard a reply. A weak, trembling voice carried on the breeze. Eleanor! My heart leapt. She was here. Somewhere in this cursed prison my sister was waiting. I stumbled toward the sound, pushing through the crowd of wandering souls. Their hands reached for me, icy fingers brushing my skin, their hollow eyes pleading for salvation. Help us, they whispered, their mouths twisting into shapes of sorrow. Save us. Every step was agony. The ground shifted beneath me, cracking open to reveal chasms filled with writhing shadows. The air grew thicker, heavier, pressing against my chest like iron chains. But I pressed on, following the faint call of my sister's voice. Finally I saw her. Charlotte. She stood at the edge of a crumbling cliff, her once bright eyes now dim, her skin pale as ash. Chains coiled around her wrists and ankles, anchoring her to the ground. She looked up at me, and for the first time in decades, I saw her face clearly. Eleanor, she whispered, tears streaking down her cheeks. You shouldn't have come. I fell to my knees beside her, reaching for her hands. The chains burned cold against my skin. I had to, I sobbed. I couldn't let you stay here alone. Her lips trembled as she shook her head. It's too late. None of us can leave. The necklace won't allow it. I refused to accept her words. Then I'll fight it. I'll tear it apart with my own hands if I must. A sound rose in the distance, a deep, rumbling growl like thunder rolling across the barren land. The sky darkened, the colossal necklace in the heavens glowing brighter, its jewel pulsing violently. The ground shook beneath us, and the wandering souls began to scatter, screaming as shadowy figures clawed their way from the earth. They were guardians, beings born from the curse itself, shaped from darkness and despair. Their eyes glowed red, their forms twisted and monstrous, and they moved toward us with terrifying speed. Charlotte's grip tightened on my hands. Go, Eleanor. Leave before they take you too. But I couldn't leave her. Not after coming this far. I pulled against the chains, ignoring the searing cold that burned my skin. The metal didn't budge. Charlotte screamed as the shadows drew closer, their claws outstretched, their whispers filling the air with venom. I had no weapon, no plan, only the desperate fire in my heart. I stood, spreading my arms wide, and shouted into the darkness. Take me instead. Leave her be. The shadows paused, their glowing eyes fixing on me. The colossal necklace above pulsed brighter, as though acknowledging my challenge. The chains around Charlotte rattled violently, pulling her closer to the ground. She wept, begging me to stop. Then, without warning, the shadows lunged. One struck me across the chest, sending me crashing to the ground. My body burned with pain, but I forced myself up. Another clawed at my arm, tearing my skin, yet I pushed forward. I screamed in defiance, grabbing hold of the chain that bound Charlotte and pulling with every ounce of strength I had. The ground split open beneath us, swallowing everything in darkness. The screams of the souls, the laughter of the shadows, the thunder of the cursed jewel, all of it blended into chaos. I clung to my sister's hand, refusing to let go, even as the world crumbled around us. And then, just as the last piece of ground gave way beneath my feet, something happened. The necklace around my neck burned hot, searing into my skin. Light burst from it, blinding, pure and powerful. The shadows shrieked, recoiling as the light tore through them. The colossal jewel in the sky cracked, a web of fractures spreading across its surface. Charlotte gasped, her chains loosening. For a brief, impossible moment, Hope flickered in her eyes. But before I could rejoice, the ground gave way completely, and we were both pulled into the abyss. The fall felt endless. Wind tore at my face, pulling tears from my eyes as Charlotte and I plummeted together into the abyss. The light from the cracked jewel above shrank rapidly until it was nothing more than a dying ember in a starless sky. My grip on her hand was the only anchor I had, the only proof that I wasn't already lost in the void. The air grew colder the deeper we fell. My lungs burned, my heart thundered, and for a moment I feared I might black out. But just before the darkness swallowed us completely, the fall ended with a violent crash. I hit the ground hard, pain searing through my body. Charlotte landed beside me with a groan. When I lifted my head, I realized we were no longer in the wasteland. We had fallen into something far worse. It was a cavern, vast and hollow, stretching out endlessly in every direction. The walls pulsed faintly, like the inside of some monstrous creature's chest. Veins of glowing red light ran across the stone, converging into a single point at the cavern's center. And there, floating in midair, was the true heart of the necklace's curse. The jewel, larger now, brighter, alive. It pulsed in rhythm, each beat sending tremors through the ground. Whispers filled the cavern, louder here, clearer. They weren't just voices anymore, they were demands. Asterisk, surrender. Submit. Become part of us. Asterisk. Charlotte trembled, clutching her arms to her chest. This is where it ends. This is the necklace's core. Her words froze me. If this was the heart of the curse, then maybe, just maybe, there was a way to destroy it. But the thought of facing that thing, of fighting against something that had consumed so many before us, was enough to make even my blood turn to ice. The ground shook violently, and the whispers grew into screams. From the red veins on the cavern floor, shapes began to emerge. Dark, twisted figures, each one more grotesque than the last. Their bodies were warped, their faces half-formed, as if they had been sculpted in haste and abandoned. Yet their eyes glowed with the same crimson light as the jewel. They surrounded us in silence, watching, waiting. My heart raced. I pulled Charlotte closer, whispering, "Stay behind me." But the truth was, I had no plan. One of the creatures stepped forward, its movements jerky, unnatural. Its mouth opened, releasing a guttural hiss. "One must stay. One must serve. The necklace demands it." The others echoed the words, their voices blending into a horrible chant. "One must stay. One must serve." Charlotte's face went pale. She shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "No, Eleanor, they mean us." Panic gripped me. It was a cruel choice. One of us would be allowed to escape, while the other would be bound to the curse forever. The cavern walls shuddered, the jewel pulsing faster, hungrier. It was feeding on our fear. I stepped forward, defiance burning in my chest. "No one will serve. Not me. Not my sister." The creatures shrieked, their bodies twisting, their forms unraveling and reforming as though the very act of defiance pained them. The ground split open, molten cracks glowing beneath our feet. The cavern roared with fury, and the jewel flared brighter. Suddenly, Charlotte grabbed my arm. Her grip was strong, desperate. "Eleanor," she whispered, "if one of us must stay, let it be me." Her words pierced me like a blade. My throat tightened, rage and sorrow warring inside me. "No," I cried. "I came here to save you. I won't leave without you." But she shook her head, her eyes full of grief. "You've lived a life. You've carried this family. I'm already lost. Please, don't throw away your chance." Before I could protest, the creatures lunged. Shadows closed in from every side, their claws reaching, their voices chanting louder. "One must stay. One must serve." I grabbed Charlotte's hand, refusing to let go. We spun together as the creatures swarmed, their bodies pressing in like a tide. In the chaos, I caught sight of the jewel at the cavern's center. Its cracks from above still lingered, faint but visible. Thought struck me like lightning. If the light from the necklace I wore had weakened the jewel once, Maybe it could finish the job. I turned to Charlotte, shouting above the roar of the cavern. "We can destroy it. Help me." Her eyes widened with shock, and then with understanding. She nodded, gripping my other hand. Together, we lifted our joined hands toward the jewel. The necklace around my neck began to burn again, hotter than ever. Light surged from it, brighter and purer, pushing against the suffocating darkness. The creatures shrieked, writhing in pain as the glow seared through them. The cavern trembled, the jewel's surface splintering further, shards of red light shooting out like daggers. For a moment it seemed to be working. But then the jewel roared. The light from my necklace sputtered, faltering as though crushed by an unseen force. The cracks sealed themselves, the jewel pulsing with renewed power. A wave of energy blasted outward, throwing Charlotte and me apart. I hit the ground hard, the air knocked from my lungs. When I looked up, my blood ran cold. The jewel's light had shifted. No longer just red, it now burned with streaks of black, as though it had swallowed the last remnants of hope. The cavern itself seemed to close in, the walls pressing tighter, the whispers turning into cruel laughter. And then I saw her. Charlotte was no longer at my side. She was standing near the jewel, her body rigid, her eyes glowing crimson. The chains I had broken above had reformed, coiling around her once again, but now they pulled her toward the jewel itself. Her lips moved, but the voice that came out was not hers. It was deeper, hollow, and terrible. "One has been chosen." Charlotte's body stiffened as the chains dragged her closer to the glowing jewel. Her eyes, now crimson and unnatural, locked on mine, but I couldn't tell if any part of my sister remained inside. The cavern pulsed with power, each beat of the jewel pulling her deeper into its grip. "No!" I screamed, forcing myself to my feet. My legs trembled, my chest ached, but I lunged forward, reaching for her hand. The air between us thickened like wading through tar. Every step felt heavier than the last, the curse itself fighting to keep me away. Charlotte's lips moved again, her voice hollow and layered with 100 others. "Do not fight. One must serve. One must remain." I clenched my teeth, shoving against the invisible weight pressing me down. "You're not its servant, you're my sister." My fingers brushed hers for the briefest moment, but the chains yanked her back, slamming her to her knees before the jewel. The cavern erupted with laughter. The shadows we had fought earlier crawled along the walls, their grotesque forms stretching and twisting, feeding on my despair. The jewel pulsed brighter, bathing everything in crimson light. My own necklace seared against my chest, burning into my skin, as though begging me to act. I tore it off and held it high, the glow flickering like a dying candle. "Let her go!" I shouted, thrusting it toward the jewel. For a second the crimson dimmed and Charlotte gasped, her eyes flickering back to blue. "Eleanor," she whispered, her voice trembling with recognition. Hope surged through me. I staggered closer, my hand outstretched. "Fight it, Charlotte. Don't let it take you." But the jewel roared again, and its power surged. The chains tightened, wrapping around her torso, her neck, even her face. Her eyes rolled back, her scream echoing through the cavern as the jewel swallowed her voice. And then she was gone. Not gone in body. Her form still knelt there before the jewel, but gone in spirit. What remained was a shell, her features twisted with the curse's mark. She lifted her head, her crimson eyes glowing brighter, and when she spoke, her voice was no longer hers. "She belongs to us now. You will join her." The creatures shrieked in unison, charging at me from every side. My heart pounded, panic clawing at my throat. I stumbled backward, clutching the necklace in my hand, but its light flickered weakly. The jewel's curse was overpowering it. Ran. My feet pounded against the cavern floor, my lungs burning with every breath. Shadows reached for me, claws scraping the ground as they lunged. I dodged one, then another, but they were endless. Their whispers filled my head, drowning out my own thoughts. Stay. Surrender. A wall of rock rose before me, blocking my path. I spun around, only to see the creatures closing in. My chest tightened, fear threatening to break me. And then, through the chaos, I heard a sound, a faint hum. The necklace in my hand vibrated, its glow pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. I looked down at it, realization dawning. This trinket wasn't just a key to the curse, it was a weapon. Gritting my teeth, I lifted it again, forcing my shaking hand to steady. "If you want me," I growled, "you'll have to fight for me." The light burst forth, brighter this time, blinding in its purity. The creatures shrieked, dissolving into smoke as the beam struck them. The cavern walls quaked, cracks spreading across the floor. The jewel flickered violently, its crimson light stuttering like a candle in the wind. Charlotte's body convulsed, her chains rattling furiously. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw her true self again, struggling against the darkness. Her lips formed my name. Eleanor. But before I could reach her, the ground split apart. The floor crumbled beneath me, opening into a chasm that glowed with molten fire. I fell hard onto a ledge, rocks shattering under my weight. Pain seared through my limbs, but I forced myself to look up. Charlotte stood above me, no longer bound. The chains had vanished, but her body moved with eerie grace, as though the curse itself guided her steps. She held out her hand, and to my horror, the cursed jewel answered. A shard of its light broke free, floating down into her palm, embedding itself into her chest. Her scream was both human and monstrous, echoing through the cavern. When her eyes opened again, crimson flames burned within them. My sister had become the vessel of the curse. I clung to the ledge, staring up at her in disbelief. "Charlotte, no." She tilted her head, her expression both sorrowful and cruel. Her voice was layered now, half hers, half something else entirely. "You tried to save me, Eleanor. But now you must save yourself. Or I will destroy you." The ledge beneath my hands cracked, crumbling further into the abyss. My arms trembled as I tried to hold on, the necklace still burning in my grip. Above me, Charlotte raised her arms, the jewel's energy swirling around her like a storm. The cavern shook violently, molten fire spitting from the cracks below. I realized, with a sinking dread, that this was no longer about saving her. This was about survival. Charlotte, my sister, my blood, was now the curse's chosen weapon. And she was coming for me. The air trembled with power as Charlotte hovered above me, her body no longer moving with the natural rhythm of life. Crimson light coursed through her veins like fire, her arms outstretched as though she were a puppet strung to an unseen master. The shard of the cursed jewel embedded in her chest pulsed in time with the cavern, each beat louder than the last. I clung desperately to the ledge, fingers raw and bleeding, sweat and dust mixing on my face. My heart hammered against my ribs, not just with fear, but with disbelief. My sister, my closest friend, the one who had once braided my hair on quiet mornings and held my hand during storms, she stood transformed before me, a weapon of the curse itself. Her voice echoed down, layered and chilling. "You cannot fight me, Eleanor. The curse is older than us, older than blood. Takes what it wants. And it wants you." I pulled myself up, gasping as stone scraped my knees. The necklace in my hand glowed faintly, its warmth steady despite my shaking. I raised it like a shield. "You're wrong. You're still in there, Charlotte. I saw you fight it before you called my name. I know you can hear me." For a fleeting moment, her crimson eyes flickered blue, a shadow of my sister's true self breaking through. But then the jewel pulsed, and the light vanished. Her lips twisted into a cruel smile. "You mistake memory for mercy." The cavern roared. From the cracks in the floor, molten fire erupted, sending streams of heat and ash into the air. Shadows poured out once again, crawling along the walls, their eyes glowing like embers. They circled me, hissing, waiting for her command. I gritted my teeth, clutching the necklace tighter. "Then I'll free you, whether you want me to or not." Charlotte lifted her hand, and the shadows lunged. I swung the necklace outward, its light bursting into the cavern like lightning. The creatures shrieked, dissolving into smoke as the beam cut through them. My heart surged with hope, but then the light sputtered, dimming, almost dying out. The curse was stronger now, feeding on Charlotte's body. She descended toward me, her bare feet not touching the ground, her hair billowing as if caught in a storm. You cannot fight forever. Each moment drains you. Each strike steals your breath. And when you are empty, she leaned closer, her glowing eyes boring into mine. The curse will take what remains. I backed away, my heels scraping against the crumbling stone. If you're right, then why hasn't it taken me yet? Why give me the necklace? Why let me fight? Her expression faltered. For the briefest heartbeat, her voice softened, breaking through the layers of monstrous echoes. Because it fears you. Froze. The curse feared me. But before I could press further, the jewel inside her chest flared violently, and she screamed. Her body convulsed, hands clawing at the air as though the curse itself punished her for speaking the truth. I reached out, desperate, but the cavern exploded with force, throwing me against the wall. Pain shot through my ribs as I hit the stone, the necklace slipping from my hand. It skittered across the ground, its glow fading. Charlotte stood in the center of the cavern, her body trembling as the shard's light burned brighter and brighter. Her voice returned, but this time it was not hers at all. It was deeper, ancient, 1,000 voices woven into one. She is gone. You cannot save her. You can only join her. My chest tightened, tears stinging my eyes. Well, I refused to believe that. Charlotte was still there, buried, fighting. I could feel it, could hear it. I crawled toward the necklace, each breath sharp and painful. My fingers closed around it just as Charlotte raised her hands, summoning the molten fire itself. Rivers of flame twisted into serpents, coiling around her before surging toward me. I lifted the necklace, bracing myself. The fire struck the light, and for a moment, the cavern disappeared in a blinding explosion. Heat seared my skin, rocks shattered around me, and the air screamed with the sound of power colliding. When the light cleared, I found myself kneeling on the ground, smoke rising from the cracks, my lungs burning. The necklace glowed faintly again, its surface cracked as though straining under the pressure. Charlotte stood opposite me, her face twisted in anguish. Her eyes flickered again, crimson then blue then crimson once more. She gripped her chest where the shard pulsed, her voice breaking. Eleanor. I can't. I stumbled forward. Yes, you can. Fight it, Charlotte. You're stronger than this curse. Her body shook violently, her scream filling the cavern. And then suddenly she dropped to her knees. The shard's light flared once more, and to my horror it shattered. Shards of crimson energy erupted from her chest, shooting across the cavern like knives. One struck the ground beside me, carving through stone. Another grazed my arm, searing my skin with burning agony. I cried out, clutching the wound, but forced myself to look at her. Charlotte knelt in the center of the storm, her body consumed by light. Her eyes found mine one last time, blue and full of sorrow. I'm sorry, she whispered. And then she was gone. Her body dissolved into crimson light, pulled into the cavern walls, leaving nothing but silence. The shard, too, was gone, absorbed into the very stone. I fell to the ground, my chest heaving, tears streaming down my face. My sister, my only family, had been taken by the curse. But as I knelt there, broken, I felt the necklace warm in my palm. A whisper brushed my ear, soft and trembling. It was Charlotte's voice. Asterisk, don't stop. End it. Asterisk. My blood ran cold. She wasn't entirely gone. She was trapped, bound within the curse itself. And the only way to free her was to destroy the jewel completely. I wiped my tears, clutching the necklace tight. My grief burned into fury. If the curse thought it had won, it was wrong. Because now I wasn't just fighting to survive. I was fighting to save her soul. The cavern was deathly silent after Charlotte vanished. But inside me, silence did not exist. My heart roared with grief, rage, and determination. My hands shook as I clutched the necklace, its surface cracked, its glow dim but steady. The whisper of my sister's voice still lingered in my ears. Asterisk, don't stop. End it. Asterisk. I rose on trembling legs, my chest aching from the impact, my skin blistered from fire, but my spirit burned brighter than ever. The curse had stolen my family, generation after generation. It thought it had finally won by taking Charlotte. But it had made its greatest mistake. It had awakened in me the one thing stronger than its hunger, the unbreakable love for my sister. The cavern shifted around me, the walls pulsing like veins, alive and breathing. Shadows thickened once more, rising from the cracks in the ground. But this time they didn't lunge. They circled me slowly, their red eyes unblinking as if waiting, watching, testing. Then the voice came again. Not Charlotte's, but the ancient, monstrous voice of the curse itself. You cannot end me, child. I was here before your blood, and I will remain long after it. Am eternal. You are dust. I spat blood onto the stone, clutching the necklace so hard it cut into my palm. Maybe I'm dust, but dust can bury anything. Even you. The cavern thundered with laughter, deep and endless, shaking the ground beneath me. The shadows swirled faster, closing in, and the walls began to split open, revealing rivers of molten fire. At the center of the cavern, the stone cracked wide, and from it, a massive shard of crimson crystal emerged, glowing with terrible light. The source of the curse. It pulsed like a heart, beating with Charlotte's stolen soul and the screams of countless others. My stomach turned, bile rising in my throat, but I forced myself forward. Each step felt heavier, as if the cavern itself tried to hold me back. Do you think you can destroy me? The voice sneered, rattling in my bones. Your sister is mine. Her soul is woven into my being. Strike me and you strike her. Break me and you break her forever. My hand froze around the necklace. The thought nearly crushed me. If I destroyed the crystal, would I destroy Charlotte with it? My vision blurred with tears. I couldn't lose her. Not again. But then I remembered her final words. Asterisk, don't stop. End it. Asterisk. Charlotte hadn't asked me to save her body. She had begged me to end her suffering, to free her soul, no matter the cost. And maybe, just maybe, the curse had lied. Maybe if I destroyed it completely, her spirit would finally be free. I took a deep breath, raising the necklace high. Then if I must choose between letting her suffer in you or letting her go free, I'll choose freedom. Even if it means losing her forever. The shadows shrieked, lunging at me in fury. I sprinted forward, the cavern shaking violently, molten fire bursting around me. My lungs burned, my legs screamed with pain, but I didn't stop. I leapt onto the cracked platform where the crystal pulsed, raising the necklace above my head. The curse roared. No! The shadows crashed against me, claws tearing at my skin, but the necklace blazed with light, burning them away. I screamed with every ounce of strength left in me and drove the necklace into the heart of the crystal. The cavern erupted. Light and fire consumed everything, a deafening explosion that shattered stone, burned away shadows, and tore through the darkness itself. I felt myself lifted, thrown, broken. My body screamed in agony, but my spirit was weightless. And in the blinding light, I saw her. Charlotte stood before me, whole again, her eyes blue, her face soft with peace. She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. You did it, Eleanor. You freed me. I reached for her, sobbing. Don't go. Please don't go. She touched my cheek, her hand warm. I have to. But don't cry. You gave me what no one else could. Freedom. And now you must live. The light grew brighter, swallowing her, pulling her away. I love you, she whispered, her voice fading. And then she was gone. The light faded. Silence returned. The cavern was nothing but rubble and ash, the crystal reduced to dust. The necklace in my hand cracked completely, its glow extinguished forever. I collapsed to the ground, sobbing, my body broken, my soul torn. But for the first time the air was still. No whispers. No shadows. The curse was gone. I don't know how long I lay there before the rescuers found me. Villagers who had followed the tremors, who pulled me from the ruins and carried me into the dawn. I awoke days later in my own home. Wounds bandaged, the necklace gone. Life went on as it always does. But I was never the same. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Charlotte's face in the light. Not in pain. Not cursed. But free. And that gave me peace. The children in the family never spoke of the necklace again. It was gone from this world, as though it had never existed. But I made sure they knew the truth. Not just of the curse, but of the cost of defying it. I told them, evil feeds on fear, but love has the power to end even the darkest curse. And that is what I want you to remember. Some chains are invisible, some burdens heavy, but when we face them with courage and love, we can break them, even if it costs us everything. Thank you for following this journey through. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe so more people can discover it. Remember, never ignore the warnings of those who came before you, and never underestimate the power of love to conquer darkness.